Okay, friends, back on the channel. My favorite real estate investor, Michael Zuber, one rental at a time. How you doing, Mike?
I'm doing well, Aaron. Thank you for the opportunity. It's always fun to talk real estate. Folks that are in the business doing the work, and sometimes we get to look at analyst reports and try to ask ourselves, what the heck are they talking about?
Yeah. So just so you guys know, for those who watch the channel, I had a meeting with a head advisor, chief economist at CoreLogic. And if you don't know CoreLogic, they're a big real estate data company.
Mhm.
And she had a lot of slides, a lot of information, super packed with stuff. And I was very curious. The first thought I came to mind is, what would Michael think of this? That was my first thing. And for those of you who may not know Michael, you should go to the channel One Rental at a Time on YouTube and join, because his content is uh, amazing, to say
Yeah,
the least. So
I appreciate that. We gave it a shot. One thing that makes me a little different. So first off, if you go to my LinkedIn profile, the title now says Chief Economist. I am a trained economist. That is where my degree is. I'm a little unique than a lot of economists out there. I'm 23 years in the real estate game. I've been buying and selling and 1031ing for 23 years. So I have a unique focus. It's obviously very focused and concentrated on my market. But I've been looking at real estate information for 23 years. So I enjoy talking about this stuff. It's really important.
yeah. So let's jump right in here. There's so much to talk about.
Mhm.
The first thing I have here that I wrote down is you were right. So uh, we talk about sort of months ago you were talking about the spring buying season is going to show up and the sellers are not going to show, and that's exactly what one of the big things that she talked about is because of these conditions, right? Interest rates being higher and so forth and so on. But the sellers did not show, but the buyers did, right? So maybe
Yeah.
for my audience, folks who are just first-time home buyers or looking to get a loan and so forth, what does that mean for them as buyers?
Well, unfortunately, it means it's hard, right? It's probably not impossible because I think Q1, Q2 of 2022 was impossible. That was land of craziness where people were routinely going over ask, wavy condition, going hard on EMDs. It was an unhealthy real estate market, probably the most unhealthy real estate market I've ever seen. The market today is slower, but unfortunately, my call was right. And I think we're going to have several selling seasons where the spring market doesn't materialize. So
Mm.
it would not shock me if we were down at 4 million transactions, 4.2, 4.3 for years to come, right? And just so people have historical context that, 6 million, 6.5 when you add in new home sales is kind of the normal for well over a decade. So we're down 40%, roughly speaking, in total transactions. Again, a call that I had years ago that was coming. It was the actual housing crash, Aaron, that nobody saw coming except myself in this channel. Now I've told people that the spring selling season won't materialize. I want to give a shout out to Fortune Magazine. Fortune Magazine interviewed me 3 or 4 months ago. You could just type in my name, Michael Zuber, and go, it'll show Fortune, or you can go to my website, One Rental at a Time, and find it. But basically, I told people this was coming. And they just wrote up a follow up article just published yesterday about 98% of mortgages are below, existing rates. And what we've learned over the last year is rates matter. Simply said, 7% stops demand. 6% brings crazy demand back. Unfortunately, with the current setup, we won't see meaningful supply. And meaningful supply means the move up buyer. You're still going to get the job transfers, death, divorce, that kind of stuff. That's how you get 4 million. But in order to get 6.5, Aaron, we need the move up buyer who is actually two transactions. They're selling something and buying something. And today it doesn't make financial sense for most people. I have a 2.8% mortgage on a house that I like. I've been in it for a couple of years. I see no reason to upgrade. I don't need another bedroom. I don't need another school district. And I certainly don't need $100,000 higher purchase and a doubling of my mortgage rate. So the spring selling season did materialize as we called, and unfortunately, I can tell you the next one's not coming either. So as a buyer, first time home buyer, I think you need to do different things. I think a lot of first time home buyers rely on their agent. They rely on the MLS, which probably works in most markets. It doesn't work today. What I would
Mm.
tell buyers to do today is a couple of extra things. First, network with everybody in your market. Tell everybody what you're buying. Network with wholesalers, network with agents, look for the pocket listings. I don't think enough, I think too many first-time home buyers rely on their agent and their agent alone. No, you own some of this. Go meet more people. That's number one. Number two, follow up. There's a lot of people that say, "Oh, I missed it, off to the next one." I have operated for 23 years and operated in crazy hot markets. Most of the deals I got in hot markets were not by overpaying, but it were by following up. Hey, I want that house. I didn't get it. I called back the next week and the next week and the next week. And sometimes they close and I didn't get it, but sometimes the agent goes, you know what? This buyer's getting kind of squirrely. Let's write up a backup offer. And that's important because agents are commission-based folks. They're 21, 28, 35 deep into a transaction. They've spent their commission check, Aaron. And if the deal gets south, that hurts them. So be the answer, be the solution. So there are things that you can do as a home buyer, but it just takes more work. It's kind of my thing, right? Daily discipline, focus, and doing the work. Unfortunately, if you're a first-time home buyer, it is hard, no question. But you can own some of that. You can do extra things and increase your chances. So that's what I would tell home buyers today.
Thank you for that. I think it is definitely true to say that it's hard and definitely harder than it was, let's say, 2 years ago. Now, of course, I know because I listened to you for so long, and I'm in your training course and stuff, that being on the property ladder is something we talk about so much. And most of my folks that I'm working with right now are first-time home buyers. Maybe they want a house hack, maybe they don't. But I'm working right now with a lot of first-time home buyers, and a lot of them are having those same kind of complaints. So I like that, of course, right? How can we solve the problem where there's this demand? Somebody says, I hate renting. I want to get out of renting. I want to buy. How do I do that? Right.
Yeah. So house hacking is an awesome strategy. The other thing you could do is you can, again, it's about doing the work. If you want to own a home, I fully support you. It's an amazing thing. And property ladder is important. You're wearing a shirt. You can use inflation to get rich. Ask me how. That's all about getting on the property ladder, right? Again, you either use inflation or it uses you. And very simple definition of that is if you want to use inflation, own assets. It is that simple. So again, property ladder is important. So house hacking is amazing. I've talked to Spencer and Todd Baldwin and all these folks about Roommate. We've got the Lumberjack on my channel talking about the 4-3-2-1 strategy. It gets you to 10 units and you're going from a fourplex to a triplex, duplex. Awesome strategy. The other thing you could do is you can copy Meet Kevin. I mean, Meet Kevin's got all this, this stuff going on, private plane and nonsense. But if you go back to Meet Kevin and Laura and his wife, when he was working at Jamba Juice, I interviewed him way back in the day. He had $9,000 from savings at Jamba Juice, and he did a 203K loan, right? There are lots of ways, right? You got to shop where I hate competition. I hate it, right? Everybody goes one direction. It's just like so uncomfortable. So go do something else. Your chances increase. So again, go the other direction. So if I was trying to get on the property ladder today, I would be trying to do things that others weren't. That would be what I would tell them. It's amazing once you get it. It's work. It's hard. It's consistent. I get it. But it's worth it. Get going.
Yep. Yeah, I think differently. I think the exact same way. I always think of Warren Buffett's quote, right? It's like, when people are going this way, you should go this way, right? And it's paraphrasing, right? But of course, fear and so forth. So let's talk about rates. I know so many folks are thinking about this. Hey, rates are high, rates are high. And I've heard you mention some of this, stuff about your take on where you think rates are. Now, in this graph, in this handout, she told us that she thinks we're going to get a rate hike in July. And that sounded contrary to what I've heard you say. So I'm curious to know your thoughts on where we're going to be.
Yeah. So I think the market, generally speaking, is in her camp. The last time I checked the odds of a July rate hike, I think we're 53%. So about a coin flip. I think that's nonsense, utter nonsense. It's not coming. I think the Fed has done a great job of talking a tough game. All right, we've got a CPI number that's down. We got a PPI number is down 11 months in a row. We've got economy that's clearly slowing. The Fed has convinced people, and so again, I'm wrong all the time, Aaron. But my opinion, and frankly, my conviction is the Fed's done for the year. Let's remind you of something that happened 3 weeks ago. 3 weeks ago, the market was certain, Aaron, we would get a June rate hike. They were 77% certain that we would get a June rate hike. And I'm like, not coming, folks. What are you doing? And people were just beating me up Lo and behold, 2 or 3 days later, some Fed president came out and said, hey, we're going to have a pause to see what's going on. And suddenly they flipped. I'm like, told you, told you. The Fed's done, right? We got a terminal rate over 5%. We've got CPI down, at 4%. We have positive real interest rates. They're going to get better. We have housing rents rolling over. It's not coming, but if we got a July rate hike, would it be the end of the world? No, of course not. Just means the Fed would probably cut earlier, actually. All right, I'll say that again. If the Fed does a rate hike in July, it means they cut sooner because they've gone too far. If they don't raise, which I don't think they will, they can wait longer. So that's if they want to raise, great, but they're just going to cut sooner because they will have really broken something if they go up again.
Yeah, I've heard you talk about this a lot about breaking something, and this takes me sort of to the next thing that she talked about in our meeting, which was unemployment, right?
Mm-hmm.
And she's saying, well, she used this term in quotes that I know wasn't in the notes that you saw because I wrote a bunch of notes down. She used the term growth recession,
Mm-hmm.
which was kind of strange for me. But she's saying that she thinks that we're going to see unemployment at probably 4.5. Where are you seeing unemployment now?
Well, it really depends on your time frame, right? I think it's very clear that unemployment's going up, but here's the deal, right? Unemployment can go up for lots of different reasons. Let's remind you what just happened in the last what would it have been May jobs report. And again, this stuff matters because I look at this stuff all the time. So let's remind you what happened in May. We added, I think it was 300,000 jobs, positive job growth, and unemployment went up from 3.5 to 3.7. Now, if you're a novice, you're like, you can't have it both ways.
Right.
But yes, you can. There's this thing called U6 in U3, I think it is, basically the disinterested versus the interested in finding a job. And basically what we're doing is we're pulling people from the uninterested pile into the interested. And that's a good thing. That's not a bad thing. That's a good thing, right? And that's what happens when the economy slows down is more and more people. So we could have a growth recession. What would a growth recession mean? It means we're still having positive job growth and unemployment's going up. We could. And frankly, we did. May was a great example of that. We are also having what I think will be called a rolling recession, which is very unique over the last 40 years. That's where certain sectors like housing was in a depression. It's down 40%. Mortgage origination down 40%, right? That's depression level. That stuff is already, I think, turning around or certainly baselining where other things are going to crash in transactions, new car sales, used car sales, right? There's this rolling thing. There will be some sectors that get hit, then they'll baseline and come out where others are going. What's booming? Travel. Retail is soft. So again, I think we're going to have a rolling recession. But yeah, we could have a growth recession. And frankly, May was a great example of that. So I think she's right. As far as where I see unemployment, it really depends on your timeline. I think unemployment could get to 4.3, 4.4 by the end of the year. If I were to kind of peak max unemployment rate in 2024, which is probably, that's out there a ways, I think unemployment could get to 5%. It could, it really could. So that's what I'm thinking.
I know that in relation to this, there's a lot of talk right now about the election year, right?
Mm-hmm.
And rates must go down next year. And I'm not an economist by any means. That's why I want you on here. But
yeah,
what do you see potentially happening? Presuming, well, I guess we could look at both scenarios. If something breaks in the economy or if something doesn't break, recession, no recession, where do you see potentially rates going in 2024?
So again, I think rates. So again, it's very interesting. When you talk rates, we really have to talk about two different well, really three things. We got to talk about Fed funds, the 10-year, and mortgage rates. Right? They all are loosely connected, but not direct. Not one-to-one relationships. Right? Historically, in the last 6 months or so, we have seen the Fed raise the Fed funds rate, and the 10-year go down, and mortgage rates go down. Right? Most novice people will be like, "How the hell does that happen?" But it happens all the time. Right. So when we talk rates, we'll talk Fed funds first. So again, I'll go back to what I said. My current belief is we do not get a rate cut this year. I think the Fed, frankly, is done. They're going to talk tough, make a lot of noise, and do nothing. I currently see the first Fed rate cut by the summer of next year. I only see one, maybe two. I do not see us going back to zero. I think Jerome Powell wants to kill the Fed put. I think that Jerome Powell is happy to see real estate billionaires get pasted. Billionaire Barry, as I often call him, Barry Sternlicht, gets run over. He's illiquid. He's got no cash. He's struggling. He's declaring bankruptcy. He's losing properties to foreclosure. And now he's selling off his only liquid asset, which is single family homes. So again, that's happening. There's a lot of billionaires in real estate that aren't billionaires anymore. And the Fed's happy about that, in my opinion. I think the Fed basically at the Jackson Hole meeting in his 8-minute speech said, I'm coming for you. Some listened, some didn't. Barry didn't listen. Now he's getting, he stayed at the buffet too long. So he's got a little indigestion right now. So again, I think the Fed is done for the year. I see one cut next year, possibly two. So now let's talk 10-year. So the 10-year, last time I checked, I think, below 4%. I think it's at 3.9-ish, 3.8, something like that. I haven't checked today, or really haven't checked in a couple of days. I think what you're seeing there is a risk-free rate of return, right? I think that's going to be, I don't think there's a lot of movement there. I think the 10-year kind of stays between 3.7 and 4.1. There's not a lot of movement now that we have the terminal rate and we're in a slower recession. I think that's a good risk-adjusted return. And then we go to mortgage rates. Mortgage rates are interesting because you may know this, but I don't think a lot of people do. The historical spread between the 30-year mortgage rate and the 10-year bond is 175, 180 basis points. Novice, 1.8%. Take the 10-year, add 1.8. Historically speaking, that is what the mortgage rate is. So again, if you take 3.8 plus the historical average of 1.8, you get a rate of 5.6. Mortgage rates today are 6.8, 6.9. So what I think happens over the rest of this year is mortgage rates slowly grind lower. My hope is we get to 6% and we kind of baseline. I want rates to be boring. What we have seen transpire in the last 6 months are wild gyrations that are frankly unhealthy and not normal. So my hope is, the Fed's done. They're at the terminal rate, do nothing. The 10-year is basically where it's at, does nothing. And then over time, 6 months, 9 months, rates back up. Bankers compete, and we get a mortgage rate at 6%. So that's what I think happens across the three different rates.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, I've known that this was your thought for a long time, but I want my listeners and viewers to see this, especially for first-time home buyers. Now, if you're watching this right now and you're thinking, I don't even know what this means, well, don't feel alone, because a lot of it is,
a lot of people
I don't know what
most
it means
people
either.
don't.
Right? Most people don't. And you can start to learn, kind of using YouTube University. But some of this is like, I think about this myself in terms of, well, what can I expect next year and the year beyond? Right. And at least a couple of other things I want to run by you here is the question of affordability, right? And the question of supply. And that's, of course, because of people that I want to serve and finding ways to get people into homes, right? Whether it's house hacking and beginning to invest or just purchasing their first home, right?
Sure.
So let's turn, I guess, to affordability. Is there a pathway of some kind that you see where homes become more affordable again?
Yeah. So affordability is the number one thing I look at when I kind of figure out what's going on in the housing market. It saved me in the past. It told me to sell. It's also told me when to buy. But I don't think a lot of people realize affordability is a combination of three different variables, and they all can act differently. What are those three variables? Well, most of the people, if you're on YouTube, talk about price. I get it, right? Everybody wants a crash. Everybody wants 40% off. Everybody wants lower prices. But again, that's only one of many variables. There's also interest rate. And this is what a lot of YouTube crash bros missed, right? How many people did you hear talk about housing crash when mortgage rates were under 3%? And going back to affordability, I have this 53-year spreadsheet now on my website, onerentalatatime.com, that people can go get for free. That goes all the way back to 1970. And people don't want to hear this because they listen to Crash Bros. And you got to remember, Crash Bros are entertainers trying to get paid. But 2020 and 2021 were the second and third best year ever to buy a home based on affordability. And yet these morons who live in their mom's basement were saying, don't buy a home. They were the second and third best year in 53 years to buy a home. It's just mathematically correct. Now, fast forward to today when your rates are 7%, it's the second worst year. I get it. It's the second worst year. There is a year that's worse, so don't get it. 1981 was worse, but that's not meant to make you feel better. It's horrible out there. But again, right? So price, interest rate, and then wages. Wages are the things the novices aren't feeling. I believe what we are going through is a structural change in the economy where labor starts to get theirs. I think if you look at and you understand the economy, the CEOs for 30 years have been getting a disproportionate amount of the growth. That's over. We are going to see unions. We're going to see wages at the, labor, just generally speaking, go up. Historically, the last 3 or 4 years, real wages have been negative, where nominal wages have been up. That's just basically inflation minus the wage increase. So real was negative. I think that changes in a big way. I think the next 3 or 4 years, we have real wage growth, and we're talking real wage growth of 2, 3, 4%. You do that for a couple of years, this stuff gets more affordable. So generally speaking, my call for prices is flat. Now, every market is different. You go do yours, right? But generally speaking, nationally, flat. Rates back up. Rates go down, right? Just naturally speaking, rates go from 7 to 6, more affordable. And then you get 3, 4 years of wage growth, things get affordable. So a lot of people don't want to hear this, but I think affordability is cured by slightly lower rates, prices not going up and wages increasing. It's slow. I know it would be so sexy to tell you a 20% crash was coming. I just don't see it. I just don't see how we get there. So I don't want to mislead people.
I don't want to mislead them either. I think and also I think about, for those who don't know, the term crash bros, right, is talking about those people on social media, a lot of YouTubers and stuff, who are saying there's going to be a housing crash. There's going to be a housing crash. As a matter of fact, I have friends and people I know who send me videos like almost every other day. And I have to tell them, please stop sending me these videos because they're just not true.
These idiots. Yeah, I block these idiots. Yeah, the terrible thing about Crash Bros is they've been wrong since 2018. They're really wrong in 2020 and 2021. But frankly, they're doing what they're supposed to do. They are interested in monetization. There's a Crash Bro dude that makes 80 grand a month producing garbage. He makes 80 grand a month. Why would you stop? It's because the sheep keep following. So if you're watching a Crash Bro that makes 80 grand off you, my only answer is stop watching and block them, because the only way that this guy's going to stop is if you stop watching. Else he's going to produce another video another day about a crash that doesn't come. It's crazy.
Right. Let's see. So turning to migration, there was a graph that she showed that, and I'll probably put this up once I edit the video, but there was a graph she showed where we have net migration outflows and so forth and inflows. And naturally, as you saw, you've got the West Coast, a lot of California, a lot of Oregon, Washington, and so forth, people moving to these other areas. And presumably that's because of affordability and because people can potentially work from home more, right? So I guess that coupled with, we have what she calls the peak to trough declines, right? So there's a graph where she's showing places, home prices declining in 2022 and going into 23, Washington, Idaho, Nevada, Montana, Arizona. Do you think that's because they've had, as you said before, 10 years of growth in a matter of 3 years?
So I think there's a couple of things that people don't appreciate. One thing, if you go back to 2020 and 2021, several of these markets that have seen the biggest drop were iBuyer heavy. Phoenix is probably the greatest example. So it is my belief that there were some markets that were distorted by a brand new business model who came in and bought things that were overpriced. For example, in Phoenix, I know one of the largest wholesalers in Phoenix personally. They were selling somewhere between 10 and 15 homes a month to the iBuyers. And behind the scenes, they were laughing. Let me just tell you this. If you are buying something and your seller is laughing at you, you probably overpaid.
Right.
So again, if you have an endless supply of money and you're stupid and you don't know what's going on and you overpay, you can distort demand and distort prices. Go look at the Phoenix prices. And then at some point, the market catch up with you. They realize you're losing billions of dollars because you're a moron and an idiot, and you declare that you're leaving the market. So guess what happens then? Well, then they distort the market on the selling side. And you get these price drops because, again, supply overreaches demand and prices fall. But again, let's go back to Phoenix today. And again, you could go look up this information. I have lots of people out in the Phoenix market. The Phoenix supply peaked at almost 18,000 in October. iBuyers were selling everything. Do you have any idea what Phoenix, Arizona's inventory is today? It broke 9,000.
Yeah, it's low. Yep.
Again, 9,000. So it's down 50%. So in the end, a lot of these markets aren't being called out for the distortions on the buy and the sell that iBuyers had. And that's why a lot of the Midwest and the East Coast didn't have it, because all these iBuyers started in the West, Phoenix, Sacramento, these other markets. So yeah, iBuyers were a dumb business model done poorly, and they had too much money and got stupid. So that's what I think there. But migration matters, and it's actually work from home that I think matters more. There's these reports on income, the Census Bureau, all these folks, they're not actually catching what's going on. What do I mean by that? So let's say you work in an expensive market like Seattle, and you have a job that you can work from home, but you got to come to the office 1 day a week, 3 times a month, whatever it is. You're probably not going to live in Seattle. You're going to go get a better quality of life out by the water somewhere. And then you'll commute that 3 days, 4 days, whatever it is. But what's happening in these other tertiary markets is you're getting a Seattle income in a secondary market, and it won't be reported in the Census Bureau for a decade. So I think we're seeing tertiary markets misrepresented because they're saying, hey, the average income in ABC, Washington market is only 40 grand. Why are prices up so much? Well, it's because you got a bunch of Seattle money coming in and they don't care. So again, the data won't see that. So again, this is what happens when you have a bunch of PhDs and economists that don't do real estate. They don't see the subtleties underneath it like I do.
Yeah, definitely a major pillar of why I love you so much, Mike. Okay, so I think one more thing I want to touch on definitely is a big thing people talk about because of the bidding wars, right, that are happening. I have clients, I get them pre-approved, and then they're like, gosh, well, I'm bidding against 3, 4, 5, 6 different people in North Carolina, in Atlanta, and so forth and so on, right? And you talked about like the key that potentially unlocks the door, right? Correct me if I'm wrong on this, is like, let's say 4%. So I won't ask the question of, can we get to 4%? But what do you see as some of the big pillars that could get us to unlock some doors to inventory so it makes it easier on buyers?
Yeah, so inventory is only going to come a couple of different ways. Again, these are all just ifs. If for some reason, Aaron, we jumped to 10% unemployment and we stayed there for a year, there would be supply coming. That's one. If you made it illegal for hedge funds or private equity or whatever to own more than 100 homes, you would get some forced selling. If you incented via the tax system, right? If you told mom and pop landlords, hey, we are going to waive your capital gains tax for 18 months if you sell homes, that would increase inventory. You've got to do something on that side to spark selling, because right now they cash flow, they're keeping them, it doesn't matter. And then on the interest rate one, because that's always interesting, right? I think we've learned 7% stops demand, 6% brings demand back. But what happens to supply? I would ask all of you to do the math on your own, right? Let's assume you have a 3% mortgage and you want a nicer home. How much more of a payment would you take? Let's just do this real analogy, right? You're in a 3-bedroom, 2-bath home today and your wife's pregnant. You need another home because everybody deserves their own room, right? Okay, great. So a fourth bedroom costs 100 grand. You don't care what 100 grand is, right? Because it's a mortgage payment. All right. So now you do the math. At 3%, you're paying, let's make up a number, 2,200. Now the fourth bedroom, which costs you an extra 100 grand, you're like, okay, great. So I go from 22 to 2,600. No. Your interest rate was 3. Now it's 6.5. Right. So it's not the extra 100 grand that only goes up to 6.5. It's the entire loan. So your payment might go from, I forgot what I said already, 2,300 to like 4 grand. I promise you this, Most people, if that happened to you, would be like, honey, screw it. We're going to get bunk beds. They can live in the same room. That's what happened. So I think the magic interest rate's 4.5. Could it be 5? Maybe. I think it's 4.5 if I had to pick a number. And I don't know that we ever get there again, but if you want to know the number that I think unlocks supply, it's 4.5.
And this is also borrowing a buy down, right? Because you've got sellers who would say, hey, we'll pay for your closing costs and or we'll pay for a buy down of your rate so your payment's lower. Right.
Yeah, exactly. Because again, I'm talking average, whatever the mortgage business daily. Because again, if you get average mortgage rates to 4.5, then you're getting people buying down into the threes. Right. So again, I think 4.5 is the magic number.
Okay. Was there anything else that you took away from this report that you thought was like significant?
Yeah, the most important thing that these economists miss when they just bury themselves in data is what's actually happening on the ground.
Mhm.
And what I think is happening on the ground today is we actually have two housing markets everywhere. I would ask you, wherever you're shopping, to draw a line in the sand called the median home price.
Mhm.
Generally speaking, everywhere below the median is on fire. I would tell you the market is more unhealthy today than a year ago, and that is saying something. Below the median. Above the median, and certainly the farther you get away from the median, it's actually pretty slow. So again, I think most economists throw all of that data into one thing, and then their opinions are misinformed or skewed because they're looking at luxury when first-time homebuyers are. It's tough out there.
Yeah, it's a great point. I definitely have quite a few clients right now in different markets where they're trying to sell a house that's above $1 million and they're just sitting.
Yep, it's cold. It is red hot below the median and it's almost ice cold at luxury. It's just reality of where we are.
And it's got to be the affordability factor, right? It's affordable here, not affordable here. Yeah, that's
exactly
interesting.
Right.
Well, Michael, thank you so much for your time again. This has been amazing. Where can people contact you and find you?
Yeah, you can put out, again, we do the daily financial news. You can find me on YouTube. We do it live, 7:30 a.m. Come join the fun. That is Pacific. If you want to know more about me, you can go to onerentalatatime.com. There's a brand new website up. It tells you my whole story for 20 odd years. But most importantly, Aaron, I created a page just for the millionaires that contribute to the channel. So go look at all the millionaires there, see what they talk about, see who they are. Because again, my channel, One Rental at a Time, would be nothing without them. So Aaron, thank you very much for the opportunity. Have a great day.
Yeah, you too. And everybody, description box below will have all of Michael's contact info.
Thanks, bud.